the real economy does not appear to be in recovery. The real experience of real people is far different from the happy news delivered by the Bank of Canada, federal government, and the media. The Recession Relief Coalition has sent a survey to the 5 parties to ask what their position is regarding recession relief. We are asking the parties to take action. We're asking them to take action now to prevent spending cuts to public and private not-for-profit agencies serving vulnerable people. We're asking them to include social infrastructure in funding for Canada's stimulus. We're asking them to increase funding to all HRSDC programs. We're asking them to double funding for HIPPY programs. We're asking them to implement a fully funded national housing program. We're asking them to implement employment insurance reforms called for by the Good Jobs for All Coalition. And we're asking them to commit to fund and implement social assistance reforms across Canada. The Conservative government, and we're outside Jim Flaherty's constituency office today, is being forced to throw out policy crumbs to the opposition to survive non-confidence motions. And an election may well happen over the next year. The Recession Relief Coalition believes it is important that Canadians know the 5 federal parties' positions on EI reform, national reform to social assistance programs, housing and support for frontline agencies that are the final hope for so many of our citizens.
Thanks, everybody. Just a bit about the Homeless Response Alliance. This is a group of people coming from drop-ins, from housing help programs, community housing, housing support programs across this city. And, we originally came together to fight to keep Skippy funding. And we've come together since then to fight for HIPPY funding. And now we're coming here today to speak about the need for that funding to be doubled at a minimum. Right now, HIPPY rolls out across this country some $269 million. Toronto's share is about $35 million. There are many, many communities across this country that are in need, that aren't accessing that dough. And that needs to change. There was a great poet by the name of Woody Guthrie. And one time he wrote a song about life's journey, and he said, believe it or not, you won't find it so hot if you ain't got the do-re-mi. Well, we don't have the do-re-mi here today, but we've come to get it. So let's talk about the dough, and let's talk about poverty, and let's talk about some of the ways that money in HIPPY could be spent. Because the dough is here, it's up behind those closed doors, and it's in the banks. And that's got to end. Because the dough is not going where it needs to go. And that means into the hands of people, into the hands of children, and the lonely, and the elderly, and the traumatized. Because life can get complicated. And people can get down, but they should never, and we should never agree for people to be left out. So, we are having a really one-sided conversation in this country. The analysis of this recession is focused exclusively on economic recovery and on economic formulas or the projections of the week. But that kind of talk is the kind of talk that sacrifices lives. I want to talk about the recovery of people. And that means talking very concretely about specific steps to provide funding that can be used to save lives that this recession is taking and that it is preparing to take in very large numbers. So let's talk a little bit about strategy, about those dollars and where they ought to go. First, we need dollars to sustain many of the community programs working with people who are homeless or are facing the risk of homelessness. We need to be able to use those extra dollars as part of a larger strategy to ease poverty that drives homelessness, that costs people their lives, and wounds communities across this city. I work at a drop-in in the West End, so I'm going to speak partly from that perspective, what I see. First, we need dollars to support food security initiatives across this town and across this country. This poster, the poster for this event, shows a Depression-era image of people lining up for food. If you work at a drop-in serving food, you might recoil from that image. You should. I know that I've fought most of my career to prevent food lineups. But you could take 1 million people lining up in the GTA to use food bank services. Just imagine how far across the city that line would stretch. And you could add the thousands of people who line up outside of drop-ins every day waiting to get in, to get a meal, to survive. I work in a drop-in, and this year we are about to deliver 89,000 meals to the 1,000 people that come there. We are the biggest food support program in the West End, and we are grossly underfunded. We get no money from the Ministry of Health. We get a small sum from the City of Toronto, and we thank the city for that. But our program, like many other drop-in programs that serve food, survives on donations from Daily Bread and Second Harvest, and also just the courageous efforts of the people that come there working to feed each other. And there's a lesson here, because we didn't plan that food program, and we didn't plan to be that big. It was forced on us in the last recession. And it grew in response to the homelessness that was happening all around us, the rising cost of housing, the end of social housing construction, and income assistance that got slashed to the raw edge that people couldn't live on it. That's when our attendance numbers doubled. And invention is the mother of necessity, so we invented a food program. Well, history is back, and the recession is telling us to pay attention and to act strongly and act now. There are many meal programs in this city, large and small, and they are all in trouble. In unison, they ask the same question every day. Will we have enough to serve everyone? And the people that come who are hungry always ask, will there be seconds? And often the answer is no. Community meal programs need to meet what is already before them, but they're going to need more help to meet what is going to be coming at them next. Because we know the drill, we've been through the drill. We've seen it before. First the loss of job, then the personal trauma, then the disappearance of home, then families splintering, then the drifting to the street, then personal disaster unfolding, and then finally arrival at the drop-in.